Okay, so in conclusion, I still have a few minutes left. Oh yeah, I'm good. I can slow down. No more nervous chatter. Okay, so why does it matter? Whether you have sheep, had sheep, want to have sheep or not, why does the history of sheep in Appalachia matter to all of us? Why does it matter to Appalachia as a region? Okay, well, let me start with this halfway answer. Back in the summer, I did an interview with the Kentucky Sheep and Goat Development Office. I said that wrong. Development Office, okay. And we were talking about getting your kids involved on the farm, okay? And I can tell you these kids are very much involved. They're big helpers. I delegate more than I do myself today, and that's saying a lot. But in that interview, we've got a short YouTube video where we gave top 10 tips, takeaways from that interview. And also we referenced a book that you can come over here and look at if you like, Papa's Treasure, that my boys helped me with. To make a long story short, this tells the story of a family farm in Appalachia over several generations where many of the people get away from the farm and then later some of them return back to it, and some of the reasons why that they consider doing that. Okay, so why does it matter? If the growth of the sheep industry continues here, it'll be short-lived if we don't pass it on to the next generation. Okay, and I guarantee you won't pass it on to the next generation without answering this question: why? Why should we do it? What difference does it make? Well, that book tells the story briefly of the boom and bust. You know, for a while there were factory jobs here in this town and, mining work and lumber work and all these opportunities, and then the boom turned to bust. Many people didn't have a farm to return to, okay? So I said that in the end I would come back to the first thing I said about independence and prosperity. And I'm talking big picture. I don't mean everyone, but in general, I think our region lost a lot of that independence and prosperity when we went through those cycles of boom and bust. So on both a personal level, what's best for me, what's best for my family, and as a region, what does raising sheep have to offer? Well, I want to close on a note. I bet nobody guessed that in a talk about the history of sheep in Appalachia that I would say anything about ancient history in the old world. Did anybody expect that? But as I was preparing for this speech, maybe a week or two ago, it occurred to me this is the perfect analogy. I have to squeeze it in, ancient history or not, doesn't matter. Okay? So I bet everybody here has probably heard the story of when the Hebrew people left bondage in Egypt and they're returning to what they call the Promised Land, right? Okay? They'd been in bondage, was it 400 years? 400 years. They probably had a bit of a generation gap in a lot of ways, right? But they were returning to the Promised Land. And I had read Deuteronomy chapter 11 many times, and I know the main picture, it's about passing things down to your children, sharing your beliefs. But when I was rereading that, all of a sudden it occurred to me, wait a minute, there's a really interesting physical description of the land here that I never paid attention to before. Okay? Aiden, would you mind reading those two verses in Deuteronomy 11? Listen to the physical description of the land.
For the land whither thou goest in to possess it is not as the land of Egypt from whence ye came out, where thou sowest thy seed and waterest it with thy foot as a garden of herbs. But the land whither ye go to possess it is a land of hills and valleys, and drinketh water of the rain of heaven.
Thanks, buddy. Did you catch that? This is a land of hills and valleys that you're going to. Maybe it's just me, but that just kind of, got my attention the last time I read it. This is a land of hills and valleys. Okay, so here's another thing. Why did they say it was a land flowing with milk and honey? Was milk just falling out of the sky like manna? I don't think so. Where does the milk come from? They were raising sheep and goats on those hills. Yeah. Where they came from in Egypt, it was cattle country. okay? And it was lowlands, it was flatlands, and they did big scale crop productions, like what he just read. The Nile River would flood and it would deposit silt. They'd take their toes or plows or whatever, drop some seeds in there, go on their way. But they were leaving that. And they were going to a different kind of land, weren't they? So they're leaving bondage. Would you agree that it would be a big mistake to say, okay, let's make quick work of this and try to make things the way we're used to them being, okay? We're going to have to set up a brick factory, or we're going to make more brick with less straw, right? Because we need jobs, right? I know it's laughable, but sometimes we fall into that trap of trying to be like someone else, or trying to be like another place, right? Who wants that kind of bondage? Whatever happened to that independence and prosperity? Because that can fit perfectly in a land of hills and valleys, can't it? And it's possible to return to that even after much of it is lost for a time. So we don't want to remake Egypt. We don't want to return to bondage. Whether you're in bondage to like owing your soul to the company store. You heard that song? Tennessee Ernie Ford, I believe. Okay? Or maybe in more modern times, feeling like you owe your soul to a job with a long commute that's tearing your family apart. There's oodles of examples, okay? But we don't need that kind of bondage. When you learn to appreciate the land that you have, and this is a land of promise, hills and valleys and rain from heaven, right? Learn to appreciate that and live in harmony with it. And value things like independence and true prosperity, however you choose to define that. I think, and I hope you agree, that sheep can be an important part of that story. Sheep belong here. We need to bring them back. Thanks for listening and putting up with my stuttering.